Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody to our teaching students with vision impairment future teacher webinar. Not going to share the screen as I normally do, but the link is in the text chat to the page where you registered, and you'll find all the other resources and recordings and sessions on the same page or elsewhere linked in the resource. So we're going to crack straight on and introduce our first guest speaker of today.
Sharon, do you want to do that?
Yep, sure. Hi, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Felix Shi from Bangor Business School in Bangor University up here in North Wales. And Felix has come to talk to us after doing a lecture for 3 hours this morning. So thank you, Felix. Felix's research interests include disability and employment. And Felix is going to share his experience as a student, lecturer, researcher in higher education with a visual impairment. So thank you, Felix. Over to you now. You can unmute and start presenting. Thanks, Felix.
Thank you, Sean. Can I just check if everybody can hear my sound and my voice?
Yes.
Yeah,
Great.
All good.
I usually have a very attractive voice. That's other people describe my voice. But today, because I have got 3 hours lecture in the morning, my voice is a bit strange now, a bit tired. But hopefully today we're gonna go through several issues and challenges that I have had in the past, and taking this opportunity to, share what kind of lessons I have learned and what are the good and bad practices that I have observed personally as somebody with visual impairment. And also, I hope that this is something that we can have a conversation about as a group of people, especially students and academics with visual impairment. I'm not sure how many attendees in today's webinar have lived experience of visual impairment. I can see a couple of people may be, seen as a person with visual impairments. But my purpose of talking today, hopefully that will be around about 15 minutes, is that I'm going to talk about my sensory compensation. So I was born with a condition called albinism. So as you can see, my hair color, my skin, my face skin is white. If you can't see me clearly, that's fine. I'm just describing what kind of a facial style and what kind of a figure style I am in. I think this is something that I wish I could have when I was a student. So when I talk to students with visual impairments these days, I will describe what kind of things I'm talking about in verbal words so that you can have a kind of imagination. So I am somebody in a white hair color with quite bright color skin as an Asian. So I'm originally from China. As you would imagine, a Chinese person will be in a black hair and yellow color skin. And other than that, my face is quite similar to other Chinese and Asian people. And also, I can say that my sensory compensation enables me to speak more vividly, and also I have a better hearing ability than other peers around me. That's what I have learned and discovered when I was little. So I can sometimes hear a needle pain, a needle drop on the floor, and that kind of sound to me is very obvious, but somehow other peers or other students couldn't notice. So I was in the mainstream education system because that's how I was raised as a child, and so the students who are studying with me, they're all kind of non-disabled. So I was the only person in white hair color as a Chinese in a Chinese classroom. So imagine that, everybody will be looking very different to me. And I have never seen any albino person in my whole life. So going through that education system, I consider myself as very special, but also lucky that I have got a good range of teachers in my primary and secondary schools who show a great level of understanding of what I as a student, or I am as a student, but also what can I do as a student with visual impairments. So initially, they placed me in the very front of the classroom so that hopefully I can see the writing on the blackboard. At the time we use, blackboard, but these days people use whiteboard. I prefer blackboard because blackboard has got, a higher contrast in terms of the color. So the blackboard by default, the color is darker. So for me, as somebody who is very sensitive to bright color, I actually prefer that. But even when they placed me in the front row of the classroom, I couldn't read the handwritings on the blackboard, and even I couldn't read my own handwritings. I was punished in several exams because of that. So I didn't go to a really good high school because I failed in my GCSE exam in China. So in high school, because I went to a really good middle school, in high school I was top performing student. I was always achieving academically first in the whole year. And that's where and when I start to get attention from my teachers and my other peer students in terms of building my confidence. So because I'm achieving academically as first in the whole cohort, the teachers give me more time and also more attention in terms of answering my questions. And also I could use the opportunity to teach other students how to prepare their assignments and answer the exam questions to boost further my confidence. So I end up achieving really well in my A-level exam in China, so that I went to a kind of a university where has got some level of recognition in the province where I'm from. My life changed quite dramatically when I moved from China to UK through a university partnership program. So that's when I come to realize there are some disability services that are provided by university. And also I was registered a disabled person in China. I used that kind of a certificate to be transferred to the UK. So I was registered as a visually severely impaired person. So I could use free bus passes, getting extra support from the university library. And for example, I could get up to 2 times more allowance for a library book loan. And also I could get 25% extra time for sitting an exam. And also I could request a large print for my exam papers. These things never happened during the time when I was studying as a student in China. So this kind of a provision arrangement to you here is very normal. But to me, that was transformative in terms of how I regard myself as a disabled person. And that kind of a provisions and arrangements made me start to think, what is the purpose of my life, and what is the purpose of what I can do to support others? That's got me interested in studying disability and studies, and also specifically labor market participation for disabled people across the world. So now I am a member of the UK government Teams review as a steering group member. So I think that I could utilize my expertise as a disabled academic, but also somebody who is an expertise in terms of disability studies research to contribute to the policy changes that will affect disabled people in the UK. Now I'm going to talk.
Sorry to interrupt you, Felix. Just to
Yes.
let you know, you're halfway through the time.
Yes, I will have
Thank
7
you.
more minutes to
Yep.
talk about what kind of observations and lessons I have learned as an academic with visual impairments. So feel free to ask me any questions when we have got time later on. So during this time, I started to work as an academic in 2023, so not too long ago. So I'm still learning towards how I can better support my disabled students, but also I learned so much as a student with visual impairments. I learned through the lived experiences that sometimes verbal communication to us is more important than the visual presentations. So when I design my slides, I always check if the slides were having a low score in terms of accessibility score. I think, Sean, I had this conversation with you 3 years ago when we attended a Learning Celtic conference. On Blackboard, there's a feature called accessibility score. So as an academic lecturer, you could check whether you have got a high or low score in terms of accessibility. And the chances are, if you include lots of pictures, lots of videos, you will have a very low score in terms of accessibility, because you need to have an alternative text to describe what is the picture about, what is the video about. So alternatively, even I have a high score of my slides, sometimes I need to include a video for my teaching. I always summarize what the video is about and try to be detailed as much as possible to my students, so that firstly, they will be able to understand the content of a video without even watching a video, but furthermore, that it's helping them to comprehend what the complex information can be explained in a plain English. And especially as English as a second language to me, I learned how to speak English in a slow pace and also explain the English in a plain manner, so that people with English as a second language could understand. So that's a second practice I will do. And thirdly, I always go through the classroom, because I'm short-sighted. I like to see a person face to face as close as I can. So I speak in the eyes and trying to understand what are the accessible issues, if there's any that they have got. And usually students will say they are fine. But then when I make a Blackboard announcement, I always include a link to the personal learning support program that we do here at Bangor University, which is a specific package for students with some additional learning needs, or with some impairments, so that they can be signposted to a dedicated disability support team at the university to tailor a learning program for them, so that they can study to the best ability they can get. And also, when I receive the list of students with PLSPs, I would, it's usually anonymized, but on the Blackboard, you can see what sort of a PLSP arrangement are there. And you can go there and check whether there's a specific arrangement that you should pay attention to when you deliver your slides, because I will conclude what I wanted to say with a Chinese phrase, and hopefully, I think was it Lilian, your Singaporean? You could perhaps explain this phrase in a better English phrase. So in China, in Chinese Asian philosophy, we say that 诲人不倦，有教诲人不倦，有教不累. That means that we can teach any kind of the students based on their ability, and we should not feel tired when we dedicate our attention, energy to individual students, because every student should deserve the opportunity and chance to thrive. Even they have a visual impairment, and they should not be regarded as a deficit, but as an advantage. Okay, thank you very much. I hope that I made within 15 minutes time, and I'm more than welcome to have any conversations afterwards.
Your timing was wonderful, Felix. In fact, you're a little bit early. You got quite fast then. But that was really clear and inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Felix. You've managed to squeeze so much inspiration and thinking into that conversation. You overestimate my Chinese ability, but don't worry, we have Sabrina on hand. Sabrina's added in Chinese what the phrase is, and as well, she has put the English translation. We are doing well. And Shan has just mentioned, because we've got a couple of minutes, Shan has mentioned that her son has albinism and VI, the same as Felix, and has always used an iPad to connect directly to the whiteboard or to take photos of resources and enlarge. And they've been very lucky that he's been paired with a very good qualified teacher of the visually impaired, the QTVI, and very supportive school special educational need officers. So the one-to-one support in schools really, really amazing, I think, all the way through school. And as well, if our young people end up in specialist schools, it's very different from China, as you can imagine, as Felix has mentioned. So I think what we're hoping to do next is to have a panel And I'm going to introduce the people on the panel. I did make a slide. I'm just going to have to very quickly edit a little bit. So I guess, Felix, you are our resident lecturer for this particular session. So I'm just sharing the screen to show the people who are that you're the lecturer. We've got a support worker insight from Serena Hua in York. And then we have some students with us who have vision impairment. Orla Raftery, Harry Bowden, and Meg Johnston. They all happen to be York students. That's not to say vision impaired students only go to York by any means. It's just who we managed to kind of collect together for student representation. So yeah, Shan and I are going to ask questions to our panel, but equally, we would be very, very happy for anybody to pop questions in the chat so that we can ask the questions directly to our students as well. Okay. I do apologize. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see more of my my own screen right now, if that's okay, people. Okay. So first off, I think I'm going to ask the question to Harry. Harry, do you want to introduce yourself, what kind of course you're doing, and then tell people what accommodations and practices in higher education have really helped you?
Yeah. So, hi everybody. My name is Harry. I've just finished my first year doing law at the Uni of York. I'm from Corby in Northamptonshire. And I think to get baseline, start off with for how much vision I can see. I also have albinism, the same as Felix. So I have some useful vision and also have photophobia, which means that my eyes have a lot more perception to light. There's no filter for light in my eyes. So for the accommodations that have really helped me in higher education, I guess for a bit of a backdrop, when I was going through primary and secondary school, I was in a very fortunate position to work with the same individual right from the start in reception all the way to year 13. And when I transitioned from primary school to secondary school, they came with me as well, and they basically worked almost one to one. My little brother, he also has albinism, so she worked very closely with him as well, and she helped with when I was younger, I guess, adapting resources. So to reading at fonts 28 or exams 36, make sure I had the right exam arrangements. So using a laptop to type, font 36, A3, 50% at a time, um, smaller venue. And then also, I guess, growing up nowadays, having, when I was a lot younger in primary school, I had using that generic of sitting at the front of the class, using, proper magnifiers and really struggling to read my handwriting and stuff like that, to getting a bit older, getting from like year 5 onwards to getting to use things like iPads. And I mean, now exclusively, I don't think I did any handwritten work from like year 8 onwards, because I would just exclusively type notes up either on. So I had a setup where I'd use one laptop to type work, maybe a long piece of work. I'd have an iPad that would maybe have connected to PowerPoint slides and or worksheets, and maybe I'd have a smaller iPad just to take photos of the whiteboard display to make sure I could see it. But that meant I could sit anywhere in the class because I was able to use that technology to zoom in. And going into university, it was quite, because I worked with that person for so long, it was quite a worrying time of, now I've lost the support, I'm not used to anything else. Yeah, how will that all change? And I still keep in contact with them, obviously, and I've kept one of the iPads that I use. But the University of York, some of the accommodations they used from, I mean, a couple of days after I accepted my offer, the support team had already emailed me. They contacted me first, which is really reassuring to see, about getting my student support plan in place, making sure I have access to the exact same exam arrangements if I ever did an exam. That I had when I was going through GCSEs and A levels, support, help with DSA to make sure I can get the technology back that I had. So again, I now have I'm using a laptop, I now have one iPad, and I now writing things with a on a monitor and with Apple Pencil. And yeah, it was really reassuring to see that from the university and make sure that the university also showed me how to access online resources. So when reading books in the library, doing law, there is a lot of reading from textbooks to legislation to cases, and it can get very tiring. But the university and the digital accessibility team really was useful in showing me all the different websites where I can access all those different resources, and I was able to zoom in how I usually do it using the magnifier on Windows, the built-in one, or make sure that I'm able to though they any reading list resources they also send me into my preferred format, which is a PDF, so I can use so I can zoom into them as much as possible. And likewise, there were some things they did show me that didn't work. So they tried to show me the reflow feature using PDF, so it's just a continuous scroll. Sometimes for me that doesn't work. I typically prefer just to use a normal book, but it was nice that just because things didn't work, it was also like, fine, we accept that doesn't work. Where do we go from here? And it wasn't just, okay, that's it. The university support team, they've been constantly there since before day one. And it's going from university, going into this whole new support system, which I was very comfortable back in secondary, primary, and sixth form. And to know that the university was there on it from the start, make sure all my resources were online, make sure they were all accessible was, for me, really reassuring to see.
Thank you very much, Harry. Next, we'll go to Meg. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. My name is Meg. I'm in Canada right now, but I grew up in the US. And I study a Master's of Public Health at University of York. Um, yeah, my background, growing up, I really didn't. Oh, sorry, my sight conditions. I am partially sighted, and I have glaucoma in my remaining eye. So I do have some peripheral vision loss in my right eye, but completely blind in my left eye. Um, Growing up, I had been partially sighted since the age of 4. So, I had it all throughout primary school and secondary school, but I really didn't receive any services. I think at that time, or maybe in my state or area, I just didn't meet the threshold. You had to be more severely visually impaired than I was, so kind of had to do stuff by myself. I had to sit in the front of the classroom and just kind of, we made it work. I am a little bit jealous of folks who got a little bit more one-on-one support. Um, but then when I got to university, my undergrad, they were amazing. I got support for the first time. And for example, math, I always did so bad in math. I thought I was so bad at it. And it was because we were doing timed tests. And especially with numbers, it's just really hard for me to differentiate some numbers. And I didn't have any large print. I would have to look at the paper up here. And then I got resources in undergrad, and I got an A in math for the first time because I got large print, I got extra time, and it was incredible. And so when I have family who lives in England, so I came here a lot. I loved York. From the time that I applied, they asked about disability, and yeah, I think even before I came here, I had an appointment with student support, and I had a meeting within like a week of getting here, a couple weeks, um, going through my student support plan, and that was so helpful. I had extra time again. I had large print material. Digital accessibility has been incredible. And then I also got some um, resources that I could reach out to myself, like my site in New York. They do a lot of great outreach, and I volunteered with them, but I don't know if I can talk about that later or if that'll come back or if I should talk about that now.
Oh no, I think we do want to loop back to that, but feel free to mention
Okay,
that now.
cool. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of support from them on like actual assistive technology, but yeah, University of York has been able to point me in the right direction for a lot of different things. Even with accommodation, I'm staying on campus and I requested an accessible room. So it is a it's kind of for mobility impaired folks, but it also helps me a lot because I'm not constantly running into things. And like even like the grab bar in the restroom is very helpful because I also have photophobia. I don't like to turn on the lights. So it's nice to have those tactile cues. But obviously, asking each individual person what their preference would be great because sometimes some folks use cues like on the outside of the wall, and if you don't want to walk into the middle of the room and then have a lot of space, and so really just it's up to the individual, but they've been very helpful on academic and accommodation, and yeah, I mean, I have notes. I feel like that's been very helpful because I just assumed like, oh, if I'm on a visa and I don't have a disabled students allowance, like, oh, how is that going to help me? But they've been so helpful. And yeah, I mean it's been a great experience.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to pass the mic over to Orla. Orla, if you'd like to introduce yourself and share your experience at uni so far.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Orla, studying mathematical bioscience at York. So I have dark, a little bit of colour, and very big as well. So that's a common theme here. Yeah, I lost my sight. Oh, the lights have gone off. That's nice. Um, so I lost most of my sight between GCSEs and A levels in 2019. So that meant that I didn't really have any of the skills. So I'm now a screen reader user and a brailleist. So I didn't really at that point have any of the skills. So, and it was just before COVID, and the staff weren't very helpful anyway. Like the school staff were very well-meaning, but they didn't know how to support me. And then my QTVI was not particularly helpful. So I did go to a specialist school, like college to do my A levels. And I learned a lot more Braille, but not any maths Braille. And I learned how to use a screen reader, but again, not with any. It was like purely text and like the very simple kind of basics. Like couldn't really access maths very well on the laptop. I ended up using the equation editor in Word, but it doesn't read out, especially the more complex you get, the worse it reads, and the Braille translation can be pretty poor. But I was still working mostly in my head at that point, so I didn't need to do it because I was working as I would be in GCSEs, like having seen what I was writing. And seeing the questions, I just visualized that in my head. So I'd have a whiteboard and be drawing it out in my head. And yeah, that's not very, can't keep that going at uni, like degree level maths for very long. So when I got to York, I was supported quite well. Actually, the accommodation was really, really good as well. Unlike Meg, I like it being narrow places and been having follow walls, and I really don't like the bars and stuff because I just walk into them. I just find it easier. But I do have a guide dog, so I needed somewhere that he'd be able to toilet. We call it a spending area. And they actually built one basically right outside my block. That was really good. That is, they helped keep that clean and things as well, like spray it down. So yeah, they're really good on that side of things. But also, I was fairly quickly put in touch with Lillian, who helped me start kind of working out because I was mostly avoiding Braille, I think, like maths Braille at that point. I was still working in a kind of visual way, just despite not having the visuals. So we slowly started to work towards working out the Braille, discovering that my Braille display is not the best, so that's a work in progress. And using like my own sort of code, because it doesn't, yeah, the maths notation can be really, really tricky on a laptop and in Braille. And then like doing tactile diagrams and stuff, Lillian's been really good. And yeah, what else? Well, kind of doing learning, because in my course there's data analysis components. So we need to do like learn different coding software. So including RStudio, MATLAB and Linux. So RStudio, I eventually was supported by GTA to go like side by side, because my screen reader wasn't reading anything out, despite having like read online an awful lot that it was accessible, but it wasn't. I don't. Well, I do know now what was happening, but it was quite complex. So having that GTA next to me was really helpful, because she was able to say that's not reading, that's reading something else, or there is something there, it's just saying blank for no apparent reason, and then helping me, yeah, work out what was going on. And also the Braille does strange things as well. It inserts repeated, so like you'll type one thing and then sometimes it will decide to repeat, like type that small thing that you've put in multiple times, but it doesn't read it multiple times, it just reads it as if it's done it correctly. So yeah, so she was able to help me with that, and we're working on getting like working out all those problems and making sure it's going to be easier the next time as a Brailleist or screen reader user, which is really cool to be a part of. And then the same with MATLAB, because that's not, and Linux. I've ended up slightly changing, because the learning objectives of those modules didn't specify that you had to learn MATLAB or Linux. It just, you had to be able to do the skill. So I've been adapting that, been able to adapt that to do it on RStudio instead. But obviously long term, it's better employability kind of skills to be able to do more, and some better for different tools. So that's a work in progress, more long term as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Orla. That's a lot of very useful information from a very kind of the more technical perspective as well for everyone. Thank you. So I'm going to ask the students, and then we'll move to Shan to ask our lecturer support workers. So students, I'm going to start with Meg. If you could ask for one thing to be better for you next semester, of course you're a master's student, so you're kind of moving on, but let's assume you were coming back for another term, for instance. If you could ask for something to be better for you, what's worked really well that maybe lecturers or academics have done for you, and what could be better?
Yeah, so I can really speak to only my school, but in health sciences, our induction was just so much information at one time. I'm sure that they did discuss like student support plans, but I do have friends that kind of got their submissions in a bit late, and then they were, having to wait quite a while to get those through for exam season. So kind of just having all that information up front or in an email would be super helpful for student support plans. I've had some lecturers reach out to me directly. That was always super helpful. Some others I kind of had to reach out. So yeah, I mean, anyone who comes to me and asks me for stuff first is great. And just, having that information for accessibility readily available would also be amazing.
Thank you. What about yourself, Orla?
I think for me, having if the lecturers were able to have, because they know what they're going to be teaching, if they were able to have a list of the new types of notation that they'd be introducing in their course, that would be immensely helpful to have ahead of time, because then I'd be able to work out how I'm going to type it and access it and everything before, yeah, just kind of, it happens on the day, or like when I get the notes, a week or so in advance. Then or at the start of the week, then I've got kind of it's a very short time frame to work out what's best. But if it was at the start and could do everything at the start before I was kind of bombarded with everything else that you have to actually learn, that would be really good, I think.
Thank you. That's very good insight as well. And Harry.
I think for me, the main thing that I would like to see different would be, I guess, I spoke about how it was good to have the resources mainly available online, but there was sometimes going into lectures or going into seminars because how Laura's done at York is very much student focused, research based. Sometimes when I was going into lectures, the lecturer wouldn't want to upload the full slides onto Blackboard or the VLE because they wouldn't want students looking ahead. But by the time they've actually got round to the lecture, I'm now stuck with only half the slides, and now there's information being shown on the screen that I just can't see, and I'm having to flick through all my different resources, just trying to like catch up or whatever, because now they've got the full slides they want to properly show everyone. And yeah, just to make sure that I guess I have access to all the resources. It doesn't have to be miles ahead of time. And from lecturers, I know it's an honest mistake. I have the confidence, I guess, over the years to after lecture go and speak to them and be like, "Look, this isn't right." Or we had it in seminars where a worksheet wasn't provided online, and I've had to say straight away, "Look, I can't access this. It needs sorted out now." But that's a skill that has taken years to come. I saw that message in chat about photophobia and schools being made of glass. My entire school was made of glass in secondary school, so there were some seats I'd sit in and I'd be, I couldn't see anything just because of how much sun's coming through, and I've had to, stop it right there and speak to teachers. But that's a skill, but confidence that comes for years of experience, and there might be other students who might not have that confidence and might just struggle in silence. And I feel it's really important just make sure that we all have the full set of materials that everyone else would have access to.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very, very good advice. I'm going to hand over to Shan for a quick couple of minutes. Maybe we can throw it to the audience, anyone who's teaching here as well. But Shan?
I'm going to swap the questions around and ask Felix the fifth question, if that's okay. And then the other question we can open to it's more relevant for the wider. So Felix, if you could change one thing for the better for next semester, for yourself as somebody who works and teaches with a visual impairment in higher education, what would it be? Sorry to put you on the spot. I should have prepared you with this question beforehand, but
I can relate to lots of points that has been mentioned. For example, I always release my materials way in advance. So I think 1 week was my minimum policy. And secondly, it really depends on the subject of teaching. For example, I think some mathematics and lectures will require students to work on the math formula so that they don't release the materials in advance. The alternative solution will be that the lecturer could email to the student individually with the possible answers, model answers in advance, so that the students with visual impairment could prepare themselves and go through these statistics, mathematics in advance, as long as they can keep it confident. I think that's what I was experienced as a student when I was doing my PhD. My professors always give me slides and 2 weeks in advance. And number three, I would say that for a choice of room, a university academic should be able to liaise with the admin team at least to negotiate for a better choice of room for students with different kind of needs. So, for example, this morning I was delivering a lecture in a very large lecture theater, and the light was very bright, and people call me vampire because I'm very sensitive to light, and that in a lecture room, I couldn't even open my eyes, so I just couldn't see other students' facial expression. When I deliver rubbish lecture, I want to double check with my other students whether my quality of the materials are satisfactory. So I think that is a thing that I should be able to look into in the next semester.
Thanks. Thanks for and the kind of the wider question I think Lillian we had for all of us who are lecturers and maybe support workers in higher and further education is who supports us to learn about accommodations for vision impaired students in our institutions. Yes, who you know, at institutions. I know in York, they're very fortunate to have yourself, Lillian, who supports, but in wider establishments. I don't know if anybody else wants to come on the mic at this point. Would that be suitable, or to put in the chat? Somebody, if people want to kind of raise their hands.
Yeah, I think I'll just say something quickly about the fact that at our university, it's not officially my role to support someone with vision impairment. It just so happens to be a cross between digital accessibility, so that bit's my role, and a personal passion that's come from my contact with our students with vision impairment. And I wanted to get a point across that it feels like at every university, it's left to the luck of whether you encounter someone like that at your university as to whether you're going to get support. And that's a little bit too chancy. So I'm very interested in other universities as to whether we don't have QTVIs, we don't have qualified teachers for vision impaired at higher education level. So what are other universities doing to better support our vision impaired students?
I think that, what Harry and the other students bring up about once you're in school and you have the QTVI who comes and advises in my case, as I'm a parent of a child with severe vision impairment like Harry and Felix, same vision impairment, you would have the QTVI who would advise the teaching assistant in school, and that's set up. And then in university, it can feel like luck of the draw as to who's in the institute. I bring my kind of experience as a parent of somebody with vision impairment to my work as teaching and learning support team manager, and hopefully influence that. So yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to come in at this point.
Yeah, Gizzy's made mention, and Ben no doubt has a good perspective. So Gizzy? I don't know if you're on mute, Gizzy. Or feel free, Ben, if you can reach the mic before Gizzy. Oh, right. Oh, sorry, Gizzy. You've got serious hay fever. Bless you. Yeah.
Victoria's got a hand up.
Okay, Victoria, please. Thank you.
Hi there. What a rewarding and fantastic session. Thanks so much to those sharing their experiences and suggestions. I think I'm quite new to this field, but I'm feeling that a little bit like asking people about kind of their identity. Staff, I would encourage academic staff to ask students about their accessibility needs at the beginning of modules and to not be frightened to have that conversation. Because I think I don't like the term able-bodied, but for a lot of able-bodied staff, they're worried about getting it wrong. And actually what's wrong is not having the conversation at all. And yes, making a note of those accessibility needs, and not so that you're not constantly asking the person to kind of reassert their needs. But yeah, it's that sort of thanks, Meg, for the support. Yeah, and I also think that I wonder whether things might shift a bit, because so much of what change has gone on has been on the back of activism and disabled people at the front lines of advocating for themselves, and also, parents for children and so on, is an innovation element to this, because there shouldn't just be one person who's, as you say, Lillian, you're the, often in institutions you'll find there's one advocate, and it should be everyone. It should be the whole institution moving on this. And I think the innovation part might work, because so much of what differently able people present is at the cutting edge of technology and innovation, and their needs and advocating for themselves can really push the technology and bring things into view that aren't, other people don't realize, and not just that kind of, oh, you're specially abled sort of, which is patronizing when you're struggling with particular issues, but also just because there's so much wealth of knowledge that people, and I find it sort of sometimes uncomfortable to ask people with different abilities to, what do you need? Like, tell us everything. It's a bit like saying, tell me about your ethnicity, and it's like that there needs to be those spaces for sharing, but also we need to have a different culture, I suppose, in institutions around this. So sorry, I'm ranting slightly, but I just want to point people towards a wonderful lecture that was given at Oxford Uni Disability Lecture this year around that whole issue around innovation. Sorry. And also that sometimes these very different specific abilities counter that algorithmic kind of quality that AI has. So it's that kind of human factor that balances some of these technologies that move towards generalizing rather than people's very specific lived experience. End of rant. Sorry,
Oh,
sorry,
thank you, Victoria. No, if you can share a link to a recording from the Oxford lecture, that would be absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to move to Simon first, then Shan, and I'd love to hear from the students what they think to this discussion. So, Simon?
Yeah, hiya. So I work currently at a small specialist HEI, so small that we don't very often get vision impaired students. I guess the relevance of that is that we don't have a specialist, we have generalist disability advisors. I used to work at the University of Leeds a few years ago, and the difference there was we did have a vision impairment specialist within the disability team, which was just incredibly helpful. We had a fairly large team with specialists for various different types of barrier, support needs, conditions, etc. It could still be very challenging. One of the main challenges, it was interesting hearing from one of the students. I'm so sorry, I'm dreadful with names, and I've forgotten her name. But the student is an international student and not eligible for DSA. I think that can be one of the really significant challenges, because as we know from experience, DSA can plug a lot of the gaps and fill a lot of the support needs for vision impaired students. We particularly found students from various different countries and cultures come in with completely different expectations around support. And I think you could say this for any support need, really. But students who had sort of not experience of formal support processes, more coming from cultures where support was very informal, just provided by friends and family and stuff like that. And I can remember a female student, blind student, international, who was at the University of Leeds, who would just kind of walk around the campus and stop random people and say, "Oh, can you help me, please?" Now, we were scared stiff at this because we thought, I don't know where you come from, but in Leeds, there's some not very nice people around. And did quite a lot of work at the university there with the Students' Union and the local Guide Dog Society to set up a Students' Union society that was about supporting international vision impaired students with all of the stuff that we couldn't do because they weren't getting social services support either. So there's stuff around social life and just being able to go shopping and go to the bank and independent living stuff and all of that. I think that's one of the huge challenges, particularly for that international student group. I'm starting to ramble a bit, but I'm trying to answer the question you asked: what different universities, what approach do you have? And I think currently for me at a small specialist university, we do, we try as hard as possible to communicate as much in advance with students and get stuff set up as much in advance as possible. We have resources that we share with teaching staff, guidance on inclusive teaching practices, accessibility for vision impaired students, stuff like that. I don't think we always get it right. I think a lot of universities have a reliance on 0 hours teaching staff, uncontracted teaching staff who don't get paid for doing CPD, are kind of like not really encouraged to spend time learning about teaching, learning about support, learning about inclusion. We do much better with our contracted staff, and I think that's a huge difficulty across the board of disability support. Working with industry specialists who are not teaching specialists and who are not supported to learn about teaching and support. I don't want to carry on rambling because there's so many other people with things to say. But yeah, that's my experience from big and small institutions.
Thank you. We'll move to Sian and then Brenda. Before you get to speak, I'll mention a couple of things that have happened in the chat, and then we'll move to Brenda. So over to Sian.
Yeah, just about what we do in institutions in Bangor. We've got a wellbeing and inclusivity team. They were disability support before they've changed their name. Excellent team, very overstretched like in lots of institutions, but they're part of writing these like personal learning support. I don't know if this is like across the UK. Personal learning support plans in Bangor have been, I think they've done a good job because they make them available to staff through kind of our student admin system. There's an agreement between the students and wellbeing and inclusivity about how much of that plan is shared. So people don't have to do that explaining continuously to different lecturers what their needs are. There's one point, and that's the personal learning support plan. And I think that's something that, and it's digitized. I know I think in recent years, but I don't know if it still happens now. There were still institutions had those on paper. This is a digitized kind of solution that's been done between digital services in Bangor, and I think having that document for students is helpful in Bangor. And I think our students in one of our previous talks did mention that, because some years ago we did our panel with students and they did talk about the PLSP plan being something that was useful in our institution. But I agree with what Simon just said about like social life and the kind of inclusivity. People don't understand unless they've had experience of visual impairment themselves, how isolating it can be. I watch my son we walk through town in Holyhead where everybody knows each other. Hello, Ellis. I'll say, who is that from school? It might be somebody I don't. I go, I don't know. There are some people who will walk past and go, hi, Ellis, it's me, Gareth, or something like that. And then some people know intuitively that he can't see them. And I think just those small things that make a difference, isn't it, to who you just said hello to. But I'm not visually impaired myself, but I watch my son do that. Yeah.
And that's speaking to the fact that it's not just about the academic practice, it's the whole environment and culture, as other people have mentioned. Thank you, Sian. So just one or two things in the chat to catch people up, and then we'll move on to Brenda. So Jennifer did ask if there was any help to make tactile diagrams more useful. And Jennifer said she'll get in touch with myself and George Rhodes. But equally, if anybody else wants to have a little conversation about tactile diagrams, etc., I'm sure Orla and myself would be happy to have a chat as a side quest from this webinar. And Alistair's asking the students if there's one thing you want to say to the publishers of electronic journals or ebooks. Is there anything you'd like to say? Because Alistair's going into the meeting this afternoon and he can represent what you'd like to say to them. Harry and Meg, I don't know if all of you've had any readings yourself.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just when resources are put online, because everyone's experience is so different. everyone prefers different, different methods. So for me, I prefer just having it as a PDF. Where others, I don't know whether a PDF may be accessible with a screen reader. I've never used one, but it's just making sure that I guessed it. There are as many um, different versions as possible, just to make sure to accommodate for as much as possible. And the worst thing that anyone can do when uploading online resources is just print scans from like a copy printer or something, because they can be very hard to read. They have mistakes come, and if you copy and it gets compressed and it loses all its detail, they can be the worst.
Thank you. Right. So I'm just gonna pick another item from the chat and then move on to Brenda. I think we were talking about the fact that most universities have this accommodation of making sure that slides or materials are available to students at least 48 hours in advance. But we know that this is a recommendation rather than a mandatory thing. And Alistair makes the point, well, even if you do make it available to 48 hours in advance, who checks that it is accessible to the students? And what happens when a lecturer regularly ignores this? So this is a dilemma. I don't know if anyone's got a perspective on this. And Brenda, if feel free to speak and contribute to this item as well as ask your question. Yeah. I don't know if you're still on mute, Brenda.
Oh, sorry. My question is, I'm at Aberdeen, and I was involved with the online access courses. So these courses are online, and we had 2 queries from students who were visually impaired. So this year we've been trying to work to improve our course to make it accessible for screen readers, etc. But we're finding it very difficult because we don't have the technology to test certain things. And I have found this very interesting that, we were using math type for the mathematics, but we're now sort of moving a bit away from that to equation editor. But I was quite interested to hear about Linux, and if I could find out more about that. I would appreciate any help that anybody could give me about how to make mathematics, more accessible.
Oh, Brenda, you've just come to the right webinar.
Just talk to Lillian.
Oh my God, you are my people. Yeah, drop me a line. I can add you to a geeky group where we just talk about accessible maths.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you.
You may regret this. It's a whole rabbit hole, a warren. But yes, there is support in the UK. We have a large group of people who try and do battle. And Vincenzo if he's still here, he does a lot of very good work on that as well. On trying to make sure that we make things as accessible as possible and to educate everybody about what makes maths accessible. However, even if you do that practice, that doesn't mean it's accessible to everyone. You still have to talk to students to find out what works for them. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, where I just want to acknowledge the wonderful panel and Felix as we're coming up to 2:00. Normally at this stage, we draw the webinar to a close and we invite people to share what one thing they've learned in the chat, to type in the chat, and to share with you the fact that obviously our next webinar will be in October. So there is an early sign up for the webinar in October. But as we're having such good conversations, I feel like anyone who is able to stay on, let's stay on for another 10 minutes and keep the recording going, if that's okay. And I wanted to bring on Sabrina, who has typed in the chat, but she's making a very good point as someone who kind of we don't talk about support workers at university enough. They're the hidden labor that creates that bridge between what a lecturer produces and says in a lecture that may not be accessible enough. And they're the ones who actually try and make things more accessible for our students at university. So Sabrina, do you want to come and summarize what you've already added in the chat? Don't know if you're on mute.
Hi.
Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, thank you, Lillian, and thank you, everyone. I've been a academic support worker, aka note taker, for about 2.5 years, and it's a real pleasure to work with wonderful students like Orla herself. To me, I've observed that there are so much unnecessary barriers being created by, the more traditional teaching materials that has very unclear tables and diagrams. Even though the students always try to solve it themselves, but it does add significant amount of time for them to just get the format right. So that's really something that I guess the teaching staff can do to make it into a regular routine so they wouldn't have to change it afterwards as well. And as I work in STEMs, a lot of people are very passionate about using diagrams, charts to demonstrate the data or statistical outcomes, which could really be replaced with a good description that will just be accessible for everyone. So instead of saying, oh, look at this, and you analyze it like it's obvious on the plot, it is not, not for the students who visually can't see it, as sometimes it's difficult for students with the visions as well. So that's a clear communication can solve everything. And for students themselves, I realized that you are all very chill, very laid back, and you never ask for extra things. Yeah, so I feel that I would really love to kind of, whenever you feel comfortable, tell me what will work best for you, so you don't have to do additional work or suffer silently. That's something that will, make me really happy as well. And I do feel that the best support is a partnership where the staff plan and communicate very clearly, and the students themselves could, don't worry to boss the lecturers around, the boss the academic support worker around. We're all here to make the best thing happen to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. That's lovely for you to share, and it is a difficult task for the support workers to sometimes drop materials into a folder and get no feedback as to whether it's okay, not okay. So it is a tough job. Felix, you've had your hand up for a while, so over to Felix.
Thanks for bringing this topic up. So when I was a student, during the secondary school education, I learned to adapt myself with informal support. So I bought a military grade type of a binocular to help me see the blackboard. So that was accepted by my teachers and made me as a pop star in the school, because everybody could recognize somebody with a binocular. That was me. But then when I compare to the formal institutional support that I received in the UK, I would say that the responsibility of adjustment, adaptation needs to be in line with the very institution that you're studying with, because that is their legal and also moral responsibility accommodating students who chose to study with them. And with the ongoing issues in the higher education sector in the UK, I think we're in a very dangerous environment that the university always cuts the support workers or admin workers as the first point of saying that we need to save costs. They don't save cost on buildings, but they save cost on human support, which is quite bizarre. And that is something I think for support workers and also admin workers, they should have this conversation in terms of what are the unique selling points or what are the unique value created by the support workers to the students and also to the academics. So lots of academics in my school, we are taking up the admin duties, such as disability tutor, senior tutor, things like that. And also sometimes we have to do marketing, campaigning for the university to recruit students. That, to me, we are not trained as a specialist in these areas. We are academics, we just do the talks. These kind of admin duties are now relegated to academics, which are, I believe, set a very dangerous precedent for the future where university will become less and less supportive to the students with specialist knowledge.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Mike's making a point as well that although AI is a useful tool for helping to describe images or helping to make suggestions for how to adapt things for screen reader users, you still need that human connection for students. You don't just learn from resources, you learn from talking to other people about your learning content. So, I wonder if Orla, Meg, and Harry, anything you want to say about how important that contact time with lecturers is to you. How important is that one-to-one contact with lecturers for you? Maybe I can ask Harry to start first.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously AI right now is at a very very, very early stage. It can do a lot well, but I mean, it can also, I guess, with describing images, there's also been times where it's called me like a 70-year-old man, and I'm 19, so it's quite, there are a lot of discrepancies. It's in its early stages in that, there's not the expectation that other students should rely, other students don't have to rely on AI, and they're not expected to have that contact with AI. They're expected to have that conversation with their lecturer. So I guess for VI students, why would it be any different? I know I'd much prefer the contact with the lecturer over AI.
That's great. Meg, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously also much prefer lecturer contact, and then even just like that's why we hire digital accessibility folks and support workers, because they have like specialized knowledge about this stuff that you can't get from a computer. They can offer, community resources. They can offer stuff that's specific to the university you're in, and they have, contacts. They have other people they can connect you with, and yeah, I mean, asking AI for things is just really not the most useful. But again, I mean, there are accessibility purposes, but you can't really replace human interactions.
I'll move on to Orla and then to Mike. Orla?
Yeah, I definitely agree. The human contact is far more useful and meaningful. You can get a lot more. Yeah, they just understand the context a lot more, I think, than AI, and it's just nicer. But I do quite like that the AI is there, in that if I'm just feeling really tired, I don't want to get out and go out and have to, communicate with someone. Sometimes I have to, when I just can't face that. But so in that scenario, AI is definitely the least worst option, but it's the least worst rather than the best, I think. Yeah.
Very well put. Mike and then Harry.
Yeah, I put it in the text chat, but I've never seen anyone else do this. I had a few students, MSc students, investigate this over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. One of the problems of lecture recording is, you don't know whether the lecturer has described, as they're supposed to, everything on the slides. and you can actually get AI to go through the recording or the transcript and go through all the slides and then give you some feedback of whether is information or things that are in the slides but weren't in the recording. And I think that's really useful. It's even useful perhaps for all staff to do it. I think something like a tool that does that would be useful for the staff to teach them and to check, so they could go back and say, oh dear, I forgot to do that. I don't know if anyone else has tried that, but it is useful.
Yeah, we do have like checkers on the VLE that will tell you if images haven't been described. But can I just say that on the whole, lecturers use way too much text on a slide, but also way too many images in the first place. So I think they should be a little bit more as Felix said at the beginning, sometimes you don't need all those images to get a point across. So just bearing that extra workload in mind for students. Harry?
Well, I also think, though, to be honest, obviously it's at a very early stage. There will be a lot of good to come out of it. I mean, it's already been seen with the other VR people I spoke to, people using the AI smart glasses. I mean, just those describing stuff to them, and seeing quite accurate. It's been, your glasses speaking to you. I mean, that's something that people have spoke about for literal decades. And obviously, right now, it's in a very infancy stage, and I feel like it's not to be. You shouldn't just disregard it entirely. I know there's a lot of controversy around AI, but I feel like there's a long way to go. But I feel like there is a place for it, but it shouldn't replace the human contact that's there.
That's great. Now, this feels like the perfect time to draw this webinar to a close. So I'm going to stop the recording. But yes, a great big thank you, Felix, Harry, Orla, Meg, and Sabrina. Big applause to all of you for your contributions, and to everyone in the audience who has asked questions as well. Big thank you to you.